Good afternoon. It's Monday, the 3rd of July 2017, just after 1 o'clock. Welcome to UK Column News. I'm your host, Brian Gerrish. With me in the studio, Mike Robinson. Well, where do we go? As we scanned news reports over the weekend and early this morning, just an amazing mix of things, Mike. Very difficult to find real news, but a lot of spin and hype being pushed out.
Absolutely. Let's start off with Grenfell Towers, because the issue of subletting, the government has decided, is the issue of the day. And they have issued guidance to prosecutors, apparently not to bring charges for unlawful subletting at Grenfell Towers so that victims can be identified. Sajid Javid made this announcement, and it's guidance from the Director of Public Prosecutions. This is going to apply to anyone who comes forward with information for the authorities about who was in their flats on the night of the fire. This follows, apparently, that what they claim to be the government's commitment to do all that it can to support those who have been affected by the tragic fire at Grenfell Towers. So Sajid Javid had this to say. He said, supporting those affected by the tragic events at Grenfell Towers has been the absolute priority of the government. This includes making sure that loved ones still missing are identified. Therefore, I would urge those with information to come forward without fear of prosecution. I find this very interesting, Brian, since at this point, Sajid Javid nor anyone else involved from officialdom anyway has made any comment about the real number of people that were in the building, the true number of people that were affected by this, the true number of people that are deceased. But he claims that the absolute priority of government is to help make sure that the missing are identified. Well, how can you identify who's missing if you aren't willing to say how many are missing?
We come back to this point time after time. We still don't know total number of people that have died. We don't know total number of survivors. We don't know how many people were in the building. But significantly, I can remember a little video clip where the leader of the council was actually talking, and he was asked about the number of people in the building, and he used the phrase thousands. Now, I'm not saying he was using that precise figure, but I think it gives an indication of what was in his mind, how many people in that building. A lot of people were in that, thousands of people were in that building, but we're not told, and there's a reason that we're not being told. We're now getting into that area, I think. So people were subletting. Now, if the sublet is not part of an overall letting contract, as far as I'm aware, that would mean it was unlawful, it was illegal. And basically, what would that do? It would negate the insurance cover for the building. The next point is that the local authority must have known this was going on. So we've now got some sort of racket was being run in the tower. It was full of people. There's been comment, of course, again about the fact that after midnight, Ramadan had finished, so people were able to start eating again, and the Muslim community would have been inviting friends and family into the building. So we are talking about a lot of people, and a figure of 700 or over 700 people is one of the figures that's been floating around the contacts that we have as UK Column. So what is going on here? A pack of lies over the total number of people, because what it shows is that essentially this building was crammed full of people, and these were not the elite wealthy people of the area, of the Kensington and Chelsea area. These were predominantly immigrants, low income families in subletting and in flats with probably very high occupancy.
Azra sent a bit of research to us yesterday, and I thought I'd mention it to you, Brian, because the Borough of Borough of Kensington and Chelsea has a policy. They call it the decant policy, and this is the policy of splitting up residents, forcibly moving residents and tenants out of social housing and moving them to other areas, but possibly not within the borough, but actually outside the borough as well. They call it the decant policy.
And you're saying that is a policy as a direct result of the fire, or this was a policy
No,
that
this
was
is
in place?
This is a policy that was in place. So decanting is a term used to explain the process where residents are compelled to move from their homes because either their landlord or an authority with compulsory purchase powers has redevelopment plans for the home.
And this was exactly the policy that was carried out in Devonport in Plymouth, where the local council moved out all of the old community families in order to get the regeneration programme going. What happened, of course, area regenerated, but then the key local community people couldn't afford the new homes. So there was the term ethnic cleansing used at one stage, where local people were beginning to realise what was actually going on in this policy in Plymouth.
Now we have a specific number given to us today, and we challenge the authorities to confirm or deny this, but it certainly has not been confirmed or denied at this point in time. And the number of people that are known to have escaped from the building, whether that's people that are ended up in hospital or not, is 135. That's according to a contact we have on the ground. So 135 people apparently have survived, and are they not receiving aid at the moment? That's a good question as well. So there are several hundred people unaccounted for at this point. That puts this at a bit of scale on this. The other thing that was a video appeared over the weekend, which Patrick Henningsen played the audio for on the Sunday Wire programme last night. Do listen to that if you get a chance. A number of allegations being made in this little video. This was a video of a public meeting, and a member of the public alleging that the British Red Cross, who have been collecting the aid packages, have been packaging that aid up and selling it. And that has neither been confirmed or denied by the Red Cross at this point, but that's an allegation that has been made by a member of the community. And the other issue that's been raised by members of the community is that anybody who has been receiving the £5,500 government aid package, this really generous government aid package, the interim aid package, they then have been sanctioned or have been threatened with sanctions by the Department for Work and Pensions to have housing benefit cut because that money has gone into their bank account and has been perceived as the Department of Work and Pensions. Now, whether that's a mistake and which is going to be rectified or not, to my mind, is irrelevant. The point is that these people are already under huge traumatic pressure, and all that the Department for Work and Pensions is doing is adding to that traumatic pressure. It's a pretty despicable situation. Continued.
And there is something very deep going on here. Of course, huge sums of money are at stake because the value of the piece of ground that Grenfell Tower on is actually huge. This is one of the significant things. We've got the fact that there was this start of an approach to get the building demolished. There's now talk of asbestos. There's certainly talk about the damage that, or the physical damage that people have suffered as a result of smoke inhalation. Now we're talking about unlawful subletting. We've got those insurance issues coming in. This is a massive scandal. And of course, if it was going on in one tower block, it will be going on in the other London tower blocks.
Yeah, yes, indeed. Okay, let's move on then. Michael Gove, this is Brexit related. Michael Gove has made an announcement this morning over the common fisheries policy. So something pretty fishy going on here. The UK is taking key steps towards a fair new fishing policy post-Brexit, Brian, because what they're going to do is get rid of the London Fisheries Convention. Now, this was a treaty signed in 1964 before the UK joined the European Union, and it allows fishing vessels from 5 European countries to fish in the sort of corridor around the coast between 6 miles out and 12 nautical miles out. This apparently sits alongside, this is how the government describes it, it sits alongside the common fisheries policy. But in fact, it was there before the common fisheries policy was even thought of, Brian. So this announcement is being presented as being something related to Brexit. but in fact it's a treaty that was in place before we ever entered the European Union. Now, to put this in a bit of perspective, the size of the European income as a result, or sorry, the UK's income as a result of fishery sector is 1.3 billion pounds, Brian, and the amount of this particular treaty, the contribution towards that is only 17 million pounds. So this is not a very significant treaty in terms of the amount of fish that are caught in this particular sort of 6 mile corridor around the coast. So what do you think's going on here? Because it seems, is this just diversionary?
I think so, Mike. I think this is pure smokescreen. Of course, the common fisheries policy has always been a huge issue under the surface, because the EU common fisheries policy resulted in the destruction of the British fishing industry. So whether you go to Scotland or on the east coast or down into Cornwall, it's not just the British fishing boats that were destroyed, literally cut up with chainsaws and burnt on the beach as a result of EU policy. It wasn't just the boats that went, the communities also went with it. So where you had, we'll take Cornwall, that's local to us, but whole communities based on the landing of fish in those particular villages, all of that's gone. We've now got a lot of unemployment and suppression. So the European policy said we had to cut up and destroy fishing boats. Meanwhile, the EU was paying millions and millions of euros for particularly the French and the Dutch to come into our traditional fishing waters with brand new boats. And the reason I can speak about this quite passionately is because the last job I did in the Royal Navy was as part of that fishery protection organisation, and I witnessed this. It was just unbelievable, the bias, so the restrictions in the British fishing fleet versus the European Union. So I think what they're doing here is now poking a stick into this wound, because they know people are going to focus on this, and I think all sorts of other things are going to be done under the surface. People will be starting to concentrate now, oh yes, we can get rid of the common fisheries policy, but it's other things that are going to really be suppressed in the background. European military unification is my number one for that, but the fishing policy smokescreen.
Well, let's look at what Michael Gove had to say. He said, leaving the London Fisheries Convention is an important moment as we take back control of our fishing policy. It means for the first time in more than 50 years, we will be able to decide who can access our waters. Now, of course, the common fisheries policy begins at the 12-mile limit. So this particular announcement has no bearing on it whatsoever. And the other point to make is that this is now the beginning of a new negotiation process. What are we going to get out the other end of this? A new version of the common fisheries policy, perhaps bringing the common fisheries policy right into the 6 mile limit rather than the 12-mile limit. So you know, it's where do we end up at the end of the day? And everything that I'm seeing on this Brexit process is this is a renegotiation with new arrangements. It's not us withdrawing from the European Union.
No, exactly. We're actually getting deeper into bed, because there's more discussion, there's more confusion, there's more delay. So it's delay it and delay it. And then what can we say? The next thing is we're going to have that next election called, where there's going to be a massive attempt to almost pretend there was never a vote to come out of the EU in the first place. So these building blocks coming into place. But isn't it interesting that Gove is now an expert in fishery? So he was education. Remember that this man has said publicly that his priority was Zionism, enthusiastic Zionist supporter. So clearly Israeli matters, very important for Mr. Gove, but he hops from education over to fishing. I wouldn't trust him with the tiniest of minnows that might come out of the river. Well, let's bring in something bigger than a minnow, and interesting to see that it's now time for the Navy to come under attack from the press. So the Guardian here saying that Britain's new aircraft carrier may be a vast folly, but it still provokes awe. A little bit of NLP, I think, in that headline, Mike, because if the thing's a folly, they should be talking about why it's a folly. considering the billions that have been spent on these two ships. But no, it provokes awe. We can ignore the fact it's a folly because it's big and it's impressive. Well, the Mail went in a lot harder. This is a quote from Peter Hitchens, and he said, "An aircraft carrier which has no planes is a metaphor for uselessness, like a pub with no beer or a car with no wheels." And I think in the article it was suggesting that he'd actually been on board and said it's like going on a vast empty supermarket because it's got no product there. So those F-35Bs have not appeared. Plus, we don't have the other ships to form the proper defence around these carriers. And this is why the Russians a couple of days ago were saying, well, it's a big ship, it's a pretty big target, because we don't have the other assets to go with it. So my question is, how have we got in this pitiable state? Have we suddenly got total incompetence in the procurement system for our military equipment? Or is this the result, as Dave Ellis would say, of a deliberate government policy to cripple the Royal Navy and the rest of Britain's military in order to help that integration with the French and the EU military unification programme?
Somebody in the chat box there, Brian, asking which of the two towers is for the French?
Well, in a UK column cartoon that we put out back in 2008, we put the French in the second of those two towers.
At the back? At
the back, naturally, but they were following the front quite closely. Why it has two towers, I've no idea. I can't think of a good reason.
English-speaking zone and a French-speaking zone,
possibly. Possibly the ship's divided up into language. So if the Royal Navy's under attack, we're very interested to see that the rest of the armed forces coming under attack here. And this is just fascinating article from the Mail, back on the subject of big payouts to people who were accusing British troops of abusing them during the Iraq war. And this headline here, Iraqis who suffered abuse from American troops were told to blame British troops because UK forces were seen as an easy target for financial compensation. But if we go through some of the text, it becomes even more interesting here. We got the easy target bit, but this is the bit that caught my mind. We're back on this law firm Lee Day. Now remember, this was the law firm where one of their solicitors was simply making up cases. So it says, according to a whistleblower who was employed by the law firm Lee Day, agents for the firm pursued claims which were known to be false, as the Ministry of Defence could be cheated easily. And of course, this report's come from the Sun in the first instance. So we've got a law firm which couldn't be trusted, but we've got a whistleblower from that law firm that can't be trusted, saying their agents were helping set up the claims. The claims were processed through a Manchester-based Iraqi named Mazin Yunis, who owned the translation firm OSW Multilingual. Papers can get hold of this, but not the police, it would appear. And then they say this: there's no suggestion that Lee Day and disgraced lawyer Phil Shiner, who also used the firm, knew that the claims were false. But this man's already been dismissed from his job because he was creating cases, but they've had to put in this no suggestion.
This disclaimer.
This disclaimer. So I found this absolutely fascinating. It's a law firm that was involved in crooked work through one of its own solicitors, but now more has come to light. We have to have a disclaimer to say that, well, they haven't done anything wrong.
Right.
And we'll end on this. The MOD paid out 20 million in compensation to more than 300 Iraqi claimants to avoid court hearings. Now, that's the significant thing for me. We didn't want to get this near the court where hopefully facts would have come out. We did a buy-off.
I noticed they spent 20 million on compensation, 100 million on legal fees.
Yeah.
That's
So this was an industry for the law firms.
Yeah.
And we still don't know what the facts are. We don't know whether people were actually abused, because that's important. And we don't know whether false claims were made, because the MOD has paid out a minimum of 120 million to silence it. So if that's the case with ordinary British members of the British Army, let's come in at this one, because we've now got a Times story beginning to move, which is about a rogue SAS unit accused of executing civilians in Afghanistan. Now, some of this is very emotional reporting, but some of it's very interesting. This is the meat of it. Members of Britain's Special Air Service are alleged to have covered up evidence that they killed unarmed Afghan civilians in cold blood and falsified mission reports in a potential war crimes scandal that the government has tried to keep secret. So there's the same line again as with Iraq. The government prepared to spend huge amounts of money to keep whatever's happened quiet. Well, if nothing's happened, why are they so worried? And bring in this one. The allegations have emerged in a classified multi-million-pound Royal Military Police investigation, Operation Northmoor, which has been run from a secure underground bunker in Cornwall for the past year and a half. Now, I'm fascinated by this statement, Mike, because of course if the Royal Military Police are doing an investigation, that would normally be from within the main military bases. Why have we now got a team of a military police operating from a so-called secret bunker in Cornwall? Why would that be? Could it be that these operations are being run on a totally secret basis that not even Westminster knows about? It's a possibility. So we're bringing the Independent, because the Independent's commenting as well. SAS soldiers suspected of executing unarmed Afghans and covering up potential war crimes. So it says here that British Army officers speaking to the Times claim some SAS soldiers adopted a shoot-to-kill policy during the missions, which were often said to rely on flawed intelligence. So if you're prepared to run one of these missions on flawed intelligence, Mike, now it starts to move over to who's really in charge of this mess, the government.
Well, yes, indeed, because
the security services.
Did we not? I was going to say the word murder there. Did we not murder 1.5 million people in Iraq on the basis of flawed intelligence?
We did, weapons of mass destruction. Now, we've already seen that in the Iraqi case, the government prepared to spend money to make sure the truth never came to the surface. Now we've got the same thing coming out here. Let's say we've got some credible people. We've got British Army officers coming forward to speak. This is interesting. A military police source told the Times that the MOD wanted to, quote, avoid any of the detail of the accusations getting into the press, and thereby undermining, in their view, national security, public trust, and work with allies. So which allies would they be, we wonder? Is that simply the Americans? Maybe there's something else going on here. A spokesperson for the MOD said that the military police had decided to discontinue more than 90% of the 675 cases it started, adding, the Royal Military Police has found no evidence of criminal behaviour by the armed forces in Afghanistan. Well, presumably that's because the MOD spent 100 million making sure there was no evidence. And we'll bring in this one because this was unique to the UK column. Here, back on the 27th of April, we reminded people of our report where we'd pointed out that the old military air base at St Morgan in Cornwall had French forces embedded. This was an EU military HQ. And we pointed out that Britain was just 24 hours away from an EU military dictatorship because of these EU command and control centres which had been set up across UK. So the Cornish one in St Morgan was only one. I think we're now seeing that this Operation Northmoor, this is where it's being run from. So are these secret special forces operations that are being run with the French? Is this the fact that we've now got a shadow government using its own military force to do whatever dirty work it wants? And if the public get close to seeing what's going on, well, we've got the odd 100 million to spend to make sure it doesn't come to the surface.
Now, of course, we've had a reliable source talking about similar operations in Syria.
Indeed, and we've been told that in Syria, special forces refused to carry out a mission which they considered would involve killing innocent civilians. Now, we can only say that that was from a source. We can't provide the evidence, but we're going to tell people that's what we were told. It's amazing how that seems to fit in with this story that's now emerging from Afghanistan.
If there is any link between these two stories, then the suggestion that the SAS operations in Afghanistan were rogue isn't necessarily correct.
Yeah. Well, let's bring in some experts, and Madeleine Moon, Labour Party representative, has been speaking out. She's been, of course, involved with the Defence Select Committee. She said the Defence Select Committee should be given the task of creating the kind of parliamentary oversight for special forces that's required of Britain's other most secretive agencies, MI6, MI5 and GCHQ. She said secrecy breeds distrust. The government should ditch a long-standing rule never to talk about the actions of elite units. And I'm going to point a finger at Madeleine Moon because, of course, she's a social worker of some 22 years, but now she's become an expert on matters military, special forces, and a whole host of other things, which we'll have a look at in just a second. But let's add this one. She said it's really important that there is some independent oversight by a body that can also make recommendations. So in comes Labour, but of course it was Labour that was running the heart of the Iraq war with Tony Blair. I don't remember us standing up then, Mike.
No.
No. Well, we'll just remind our viewers and listeners that we took on Madeleine Moon because when we started to dig into the deaths of young people, the suicide deaths in South Wales, Madeleine Moon did not want to communicate with us or look at any of the material we'd assembled or understand the parents were asking UK Column to do more. She simply didn't want to talk to us, which I would regard as a cover-up. But this is the woman who says, well, I need to be part of the team that has a look into what the SAS were up to. And just to support my comment that this lady knows everything, as we look at the state of UK, this is her list of areas of expertise. So she's into defence, environment, the food, Welsh affairs, suicide, self-harm, the furniture industry, Turkey, kidney group, credit union group. It goes on and on and on. Totally impossible for a single person to actually really know anything of value in all those areas. So what are these people on, Mike?
Don't know. Was Madeleine Moon not part of the attempt to create a protest over the talk that you gave?
Indeed,
yes.
Indeed she was. The only talk that I've ever given where there was a protest. So I was speaking about possible causes for the suicide clusters that were appearing in South Wales. And there was a protest which indeed frightened off from some of the mums and dads who'd wanted to attend that talk. And the Labour Party and Madeleine Moon's name came up with that. So very interesting lady. And I'll just bring this one in, which I thought was significant. This is the Telegraph over the weekend, and here's the headline: the EU is taking over Europe's taxation and forming an army. Thank God Britain is leaving. Well, the first sentence is correct because, of course, that's exactly what the European Union is doing. The second thing is the lie, because as time goes on, it's ever more clear that there is no intention for us to leave the European Union.
I would argue we're driving the policy, but anyway, that's another conversation. Ukraine has suddenly become important again this week, Brian, because here is NATO, the NATO Parliamentary Association, holding a conference between the 3rd and the 5th, that's today and Wednesday, and they say that this is in the lead up to the 20th anniversary of NATO-Ukraine Charter. Legislators are going to discuss security and stability in Ukraine and the Black Sea. So this is the 95th Rose Roth meeting of legislators from NATO member and partner countries. They're meeting in Kiev. And it's a 3-day meeting. It's going to cover a full spectrum of internal and external challenges that Ukraine faces. And beyond Ukraine, they're also going to pay special attention to the overall Black Sea security challenges, prospects for closer economic cooperation in the region, and the current political situation in the Republic of Moldova. Poroshenko, the president of Ukraine, is going to be speaking at it, and a bunch of other important people. Well, this is all a bit coincidental, Brian, because on Wednesday, Chatham House is holding a conference on Ukraine. It's called Ukraine's Transformation, Assessments and Solutions. And they're saying that since 2014, Ukraine has been facing challenges unprecedented in recent history as it tries to transform its ineffective state while constantly under the pressure of Russian military aggression. Success in interlocking economic potential depends upon securing borders, eliminating corruption, and establishing a rule of law. So Chatham House feels that it's best placed to get a bunch of people together to discuss how to transform Ukraine, Brian. And the coincidences just get even better, because this is on Wednesday, this event. And on Thursday, the Foreign Office holds an event all about transforming Ukraine. This is the Ukraine Reform Conference. It's UK Foreign Office jointly with Ukraine hosting a major international conference in London on the reform of Ukraine. A wave of reforms since 2014, they say, have been the most far-reaching and deepest since its independence. However, there's still a long way to go, and the Ukrainian government commitment and continued international support will be crucial. This conference brings together Ukraine and its international partners to strengthen support for reform. Ukraine has great potential, but only through transforming itself into a stable, transparent, prosperous democracy can Ukraine meet its citizens' aspirations and realise its full economic potential. Is that a strong and stable democracy, Brian, I wonder? So I'm not sure what's going on here. I'll just, to finish this off, mention that Poroshenko will be in London on Thursday to attend that meeting. So, but this seems like a massive interest among three major organisations: the Foreign Office, Chatham House, and NATO, to get right into Ukraine again, transform that country. Transform it into what, I wonder?
Well, the opposite of what they say, Mike. So we're apparently going to make it into the British model of democracy. We're going to tackle corruption, I think it said on that promotional video. And what else were we going to do? Ukraine was going to move on to a new path. This is all transformational newspeak. So I think what's being put in place is absolute control by the corrupt British government, and we better say the City of London for that. Why would they be doing it? I think they're desperate, absolutely desperate, to secure the eastern flank of the EU. Russia has outflanked them in Syria, and they haven't been successful in destabilising those Eastern Bloc countries. So what they've got to do is make sure that they've got Ukraine totally under control at every level: banking system, business, economy, socially, so that they've effectively got a Trojan horse right up against Russia. That's what I think is happening here. And it's been very interesting to see that in our chat box, a number of people are saying more or less the same, that this is the transformational model to take Ukraine, well, into mini European Union territory, I suppose.
Yep.
Well, this is the subject which people have also picked up in the chat box. Common purpose will be coming up, but this was from Holland, and somebody had seen that there was a conference to take place at the University of Utrecht. And what is this about? Well, it is about reframing and nudging. And so in Britain, we've got a corrupt government across the Lib Lab. Con has brought in the behavioural insights team. So successful has that policy been that it was being sold overseas to the Americans and the Australians. And now we see the same people coming in Holland to talk about the success of this policy. So here's one of the lead men, David Halpin, and he says that since 2010, the UK government has conducted hundreds of behaviourally inspired trials to help, I have to laugh at this point, to help the unemployed back to work faster, help small firms to grow faster, reduce energy consumption, encourage giving, encourage prompt payment of taxes, and improve educational attendance. These people they're just wonderful, Mike.
Well, what he is saying there quite openly is that he and his group have been using the British public as lab rats. Behaviourally inspired trials. Who signed up to their trials?
Well, nobody. And we know that when the first trials took place inside DEFRA with a budget of 34 million, that most of the people inside that organisation as civil servants had no idea they were going to be used as guinea pigs at all. So if I can just add to that slide, if we can pop that one back up on screen. We'll bring in this man here. I found the title of this very interesting. Who is afraid of nudges? This is the smear. If anybody has got any concerns about what we're doing, well, you're just a little bit of a naive member of the public, a little bit afraid of what we're suggesting. And he's boasting that 10 years have passed since the publication of Thaler and Sunstein's article, Libertarian Paternalism. So this is all social politicking. So he talks about the book Nudge, and then it says, we'll take stock of some of the recurring themes in this literature. What sets nudges apart amongst other behavioural public policies? So another man who's convinced in the right of his own work. The public, of course, never asked, never told about what they're doing. Could their work be partly responsible for the increased suicide rate in many of the groups across the country? We've got this man. What a statement. The honest truth about dishonesty. In this talk, Dan will discuss how the principles of behavioural economics can help us understand some of our irrational tendencies. So the public are irrational, they're stupid, they need the help of people like Dan Early in order to make them rational, sensible people. This is dangerous stuff, Mike.
Yeah. Well, let's move on then to Common Purpose, because today is the beginning of this year's ASEAN Leaders Programme. ASEAN, of course, the Association of Southeastern Asian Nations. And this is a Common Purpose programme launched with the support of General Electric. ASEAN Leaders Programme, they say, brings together senior leaders from the ASEAN region from across sectors onto a common platform where they work together to address a challenge relevant to the region. Part 1 is held in Singapore, and apparently it brings a vibrant and energetic country with a diverse multicultural population contributing to its economic, social and political strengths, and participants will explore the challenge from every possible angle, examining both problems and possible solutions. And they're going to engage in a process of creativity and innovation. They're going to visit organisations across the city and meet senior leaders from public and private sectors and benefit from shared knowledge. Now, what's interesting here, Brian, is of course, they don't deny that at the end of the day, what happens is you become a Common Purpose alumnus. And once you're a Common Purpose alumnus, you get access to what they call the massive online innovation community. 4,000 new leaders every year become Common Purpose alumni, and they all get access to what they describe as the massive online innovation community. What do you think that is?
Well, crudely, that's their database of future leaders. If you visit cpexposed.com, you can have a look at several thousand names that we achieved from that sort of secret list. But basically, these people reframed. They believe that they are the new future leaders who are going to transform the world, not just their local societies, but the world. And they're going to mix with other Common Purpose leaders. So they already have got hugely inflated egos. They believe they're better than everybody else. They believe they're going to change the world, and they don't care what they've got to do in order to make that change. So I think the reframing through this process, as I said at the outset of my talks on Common Purpose, extremely dangerous.
Right, and so let's look at who is sponsoring this. As we said, GE is sponsoring it, but look who's at the bottom, the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, Brian. And the Foreign and Commonwealth Office representative said, "We are pleased to have helped to establish the ASEAN Leaders Programme and hope that all involved will remain in close contact with the UK. We look forward to continuing to work together with people in Southeast Asia from all sectors and to find solutions to today's most pressing concerns." But this is the key point. This is British soft power at work here.
Yeah, it's not a charity. Common Purpose has never been a charity because, of course, the money, the £500,000 that Julia Middleton boasted of in the early days came in from the big banks that we are now seeing as being corrupt or fraudulent. Some of them have already gone out of business, Lehman Brothers. That money brought in to kickstart Common Purpose, but then the programme was being run with the full support of the Office of the Deputy Prime Minister, which of course was John Prescott. So this has always been a government programme, and in come the Conservatives. Well, that doesn't matter because David Cameron helping to promote it in India. Now we've got the Foreign and Commonwealth Office visible. This is a British government programme.
It's a fantastic business model, isn't it? You train up some leaders, you get those leaders put into positions within government. They eventually become senior leaders in charge of money and
budgets and training.
And the next thing you know, your own person is putting money back into your own organisation. It's spectacular.
It's spectacular and so dangerous, Mike, because of course we know that what is being done to the people who are brought in, often young people, this is reframing. So this is applied behavioural psychology in order to change these people into a state where they believe that they are specially selected leaders who are going to change the world.
And one of the ways that they're changing the world is by pushing the city's agenda as hard as they can. Common Purpose, one of the main organisations on this planet, which is pushing smart cities and city governance as a way for as a governance model for the planet. Smart cities where the cutting edge ideas are out of the lab and in the real world, according to Common Purpose, with a hashtag of ASEAN leaders. So spectacular. In the meantime, the Commonwealth up to their tricks as well. So this is the ODI Commonwealth Conference. The Overseas Development Institute is ODI. It's an independent think tank, they say, on international development and humanitarian issues. But they're apparently holding a conference challenging the backlash against globalization. So we're really a bit sad. They seem to be a bit sad that globalization is being challenged. They've got to deal with the backlash to globalization. So what's that got to do with humanitarianism?
I'm waiting.
Yes, indeed. Right. So this is jointly with the Commonwealth. They say global trade policy and governance are in the spotlight. In the era of Brexit and Trump, the backlash against globalization is growing and protectionist rhetoric is on the rise, challenging the conventional trade-led growth models that have sought to bring prosperity to developing countries for decades, and they need to sort that problem out. So there you go. Now, let's move up back to the UK. The Department for Culture, Media and Sport, Brian, it's not called the Department for Culture, Media and Sport anymore. It has just been renamed. It's now called the Department of Digital, Culture, Media and Sport.
Does that mean all culture is going to be digital?
No, this is digital.
Morris dancers are going to be very upset if they're going to be digitised.
No, well, we're all going to be digitised ultimately, but no, this is the first step along the road. This is creating a section within the DCMS just called digital. And so what's it all about? Well, perhaps this gives us a clue, because The Guardian today publishing this article, Watchdog likens May's internet fines to the threat of similar to the threat of Chinese censorship. So that this is about Theresa May threatening Facebook and Google and the rest that if they don't take down information immediately from social media, that they're going to be subject to large fines. And Max Hill QC here saying that, we do not live in China where the internet simply goes dark for millions when government so decides. Our democratic society cannot be treated that way. Well, it is being treated that way, and I suggest that the rebranding of the Department for Culture, Media and Sport to include the word digital, it tells us where this programme is going to be run from. Because
they're so worried at the power of social media, particularly where people are getting out very simple things, facts, information, truth across social media is a huge threat to this machine of spin and propaganda which is being built. So we can look on the good side of that and say, as they rename a whole department, could it be that they've had to do that because of the power of what we're all doing? And I think that's true.
Yep.
I just wondered whether that previous slide, Mike, is another example of that Macron moving in on our older woman.
Could be.
I think he's got designs on her. We could give her away, actually, couldn't we?
That would be.
We could make him a happy boy.
Very good move.
Okay, well, we'll say thank you very much for everybody for joining us today. We'll also say thank you to those that have recently sent us donations. They are, of course, much appreciated. We're still going to ask for people who are not subscribers, please subscribe, because we can only do what we do with your help and financial assistance. And just to end, I'm delighted to say that, of course, although Melanie Shaw is still in prison, it's evident that communications have now improved. So many people are able to write in and receive letters from Melanie. We've also received some ourselves. So her basic situation hasn't improved. She's still spending a lot of time in solitary confinement. Remember, that is ultimately a decision of Theresa May, the British Prime Minister, but at least we can communicate with her, and we're waiting for confirmation that Melanie should be released within the next few weeks or month. We will keep you posted on that. Thank you to everybody who's been helping to support Melanie, and indeed all the other survivors of child abuse so badly neglected by successive British governments. Thank you for joining us. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.